order, so adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. Councilor Lewis, second, Councilor Coyne. Any additions, edits? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Adoption. Adoption of the minutes from the April 19th regular meeting of council.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Elliott. Seconder, Councilor Gould. Any errors or omissions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Petitions and delegations. We have a delegation today from the South Okanagan-Similkameen Transit Future Action Plan. If you want to come on up, Chelsea. And so
All right.
it's all yours. Jump in.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mayor. Good afternoon, Council. Thanks so much for having us today. My name is Chelsea Mossey. I'm the Senior Manager of Government Relations with BC Transit for the Okanagan region. Today I will be starting with a brief overview of the BC Transit model and how transit operates in the South Okanagan-Similkameen transit system and in specific here in Princeton. I'll then speak quickly to our electronic fare collection system, which is branded as UMO and is coming to your transit system later this year. And I will finally hand it over to Erin, who will speak to the South Okanagan-Similkameen Transit Future Action Plan and proposed expansions for the town of Princeton. So just starting off with who BC Transit is, I think it's been a while since BC Transit's had the opportunity to present in person here to Princeton Council, so I just wanted to give a couple of reminders. BC Transit's the provincial authority that's responsible for providing transit throughout the province of British Columbia, outside of Metro Vancouver, where it's provided by TransLink. We delivered more than 42 million rides this past 22-23 fiscal year, providing transit service to 130 communities via 88 transit systems. To put transit service on the road, we work in partnership with 58 local government partners. Of course, in this case, that's the town of Princeton. We work with 18 private management companies, 5 public organizations, and 14 nonprofits to operate our transit services. This slide here is just a quick visual depiction of BC Transit's partnership model. So on the one side of things, BC Transit works with the provincial government, who's ultimately responsible for setting public policy objectives for transit, and also they contribute approximately 50% of the funding for transit service. BC Transit's there in the middle. BC Transit operates a shared services organization, so back at BC Transit, Erin and I are supported by teams of subject matter experts ranging from our planning and scheduling teams to finance, marketing, communications, security, and so forth. Then we work with our 58 local government partners who are responsible for setting the priorities for their own transit service, setting the routes or areas served, and also setting the local fare structure. And then BC Transit holds the contract with our contracted operating companies, and here in Princeton, that's the Princeton and District Community Services Society. So just going into a bit more detail on the roles and responsibilities of each of the parties under BC Transit's partnership model. So BC Transit's responsible for allocating provincial funding throughout all of our transit systems. We're responsible for planning the transit systems in partnership with our local government partners to achieve both local and provincial objectives. BC Transit is responsible for arranging for the operation of the transit systems by contractor partnership. So as I mentioned in the last slide, that's Princeton and District Community Services. We procure and own the fleet throughout the province, which we then lease back to our local government partners. And we're responsible for other professional services that I previously mentioned, from marketing, communications, finance, accounting, safety, security, and so forth. Our local government partners are responsible for setting local funding, so it's ultimately the amount of local funding that you allocate to transit service that determines how much transit service is on the road. Our local government partners are responsible for setting the routes and service levels, which are set in partnership with BC Transit and are reviewed on an ongoing basis to make sure they still make sense for the community. Our local government partners, they're responsible for setting the fares and managing the sale of local fare products. And our local government partners are responsible for establishing and maintaining bus stops, bus shelters, and bus stop amenities. Our local operating companies responsible for putting transit service on the road on a day-to-day basis as specified by their contract. They're responsible for managing their own labor relations. They're responsible for collecting fare revenues on behalf of the local government partner, who retain 100% of any revenues collected by transit service. And it's our operating company that's responsible for providing the day-to-day customer service that goes along with the delivery of transit service. So this graph shows ridership across the province by week for the last 4 years, and it also shows the start of 2023, which you'll see there shown in yellow. 2019 is the top line that represents our pre-pandemic ridership. And as you can see, the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in spring 2020 had immediate negative and lingering impacts on transit ridership. Since that time, we've seen ridership gradually recover every year, and across BC, we're now seeing provincial ridership levels at more than 90% of where they were prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, and certainly ridership in this current calendar year is off to a very strong start. BC Transit works with 4 local government partners in the South Okanagan-Similkameen transit system, and each of our local government partners is responsible for planning and funding the routes or services in their own area, and each respective local government partner also collects all fare revenues for the routes they fund. Through the collaboration of the 4 local governments in the South Okanagan-Similkameen transit system, so that is the Town of Princeton, the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen, the City of Penticton, and the District of Summerland. The South Okanagan-Similkameen transit system is now seen as one regional transit system to the rider, with one single rider's guide and one fare structure. And on board this one transit system, people can travel all the way from Princeton through to Osoyoos or Princeton through to Kelowna. Transit provided in partnership with the Town of Princeton currently consists of both the Route 50 Princeton-Penticton as well as local on-request service that's provided 3 days a week. Service here in Princeton is provided, so that means that service in Princeton is provided Monday through Friday. And I should mention that we're in the very early stages of transitioning the administration of the Route 50 Princeton-Penticton from an annual operating agreement with the Town of Princeton to an annual operating agreement with the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen, as requested by the Town of Princeton. As you'll see in the Transit Future Action Plan that Erin will present shortly, the Route 50 expansion initiatives are currently listed as Princeton initiatives, but once this transition takes place and is done, decisions regarding expanding the Route 50 will become the jurisdiction of the RDOS. And finally, moving on to our electronic fare collection system. BC Transit's very excited to roll out new electronic fare technology later this year. This new system will replace old technology and equipment, and it will introduce contactless tap payment methods that will make it easier and quicker for riders to hop on board the bus. New payment methods will include a mobile app, debit card, credit card, and mobile wallet, and reloadable smart cards, providing riders with the ability to pick the best payment method for their lifestyle and travel habits. It's very important to note here that cash will continue to be accepted. BC Transit's entered into an agreement with a company called Cubic, and the platform that we'll be using is called UMO. If you recognize the name Cubic, it's probably because they're the longtime vendor for TransLink's Compass Card network used in Metro Vancouver. Here in the South Okanagan-Similkameen transit system, some changes to the existing fare structure will be required in order to implement UMO, and we'll be coming back to you this summer with more information as well as recommendations on these required fare changes that will support the implementation of UMO. With that, I will turn it over to Erin to speak to the South Okanagan-Similkameen Transit Future Action Plan.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us. My name is Erin Sparks. I'm a senior transit planner with BC Transit, and as Chelsea mentioned, I'm here to talk about the Transit Future Action Plan. So let me just. All right. So this is kind of the first page of the plan, and it really outlines the transit vision, the vision for transit that we have coming out of this Transit Future Action Plan process. So we are envisioning a world where transit is the preferred choice for residents and visitors, attracting riders through comfortable, safe, accessible, and convenient service. And then on the right-hand side, we have kind of a couple key points that kind of relate to this. So looking for things like the development of transit to integrate with active modes, looking for transit that links villages, schools, and has appropriate facilities at transit stops, looking to reduce emissions and congestion on the road through an increase in transit use, and all of those wonderful things. This slide outlines some of the recent changes to the South Okanagan-Similkameen transit system. So in January of 2021, we added service to Peachland via Route 70, which operates between Kelowna and Penticton, and we also added 2 additional midday trips Tuesday to Friday on this route. And then a little bit more recently, in January 2022, we introduced new Route 11 West Bench, and also added Saturday service and 2 additional weekday trips on Route 30 Summerlin-Penticton. So not specific impacts to the town of Princeton, but still, I think, nice to highlight in terms of recent changes. We have a total of 16 routes in the system, 20 vehicles in our conventional fleet. Service operates 7 days a week. Of course, that depends on which route you're talking about, but across the system we do offer service 7 days a week. This is some key demographic information that kind of helped inform the priorities that are in this plan. So, as I'm sure you're all aware, the South Okanagan-Similkameen is growing. It grew about just over 8.5% between 2016 and 2021. We also know that about 15.3% of residents are 19 or younger, and 33% are 65 or older. And I think these are important numbers to highlight because these are age ranges that we tend to associate with higher rates of transit use. So just something to kind of keep in mind, that we have great potential demographics-wise for transit use. And then lastly, about 54% of commutes in the South Okanagan are less than 15 minutes. So again, presenting us with a really great opportunity to convert vehicle trips to perhaps trips on the bus. In terms of system performance, Chelsea, I think, alluded to a lot of this already, but specifically in the South Okanagan-Similkameen, we, of course, did see a drop due to COVID. We saw about a 43% fall compared to 2019. But again, as Chelsea mentioned, we do see ridership returning, specifically, I mean, across the province, but specifically in Princeton. To look at sort of fall 2019, we had about 370 riders on Route 50 for, I think it's September through to December, and that includes riders who are using the service for medical trips. And then by fall 2021, we were back to seeing numbers in sort of the high 500s for that fall 2021 period. So certainly ridership is returning based off of its sort of COVID low point. Moving into specifics of the plan, so looking at engagement, we carried out engagement in 2021 and 2022. We had multiple phases. In phase 1, we had some key stakeholder workshops, as well as some onboard intercept surveys. So that was people going onto the buses and interacting with riders, asking them, where are you going? Do you transfer to another route? What's your trip purpose? That kind of thing. And we had planned some additional in-person engagement, but of course, COVID was very much a factor, and so we did postpone it because of those concerns. In phase 2, we had an online survey as well as some in-person open houses, though I will note, as you see on the slide, the Princeton open house was unfortunately canceled due to flooding. And then in phase 3, we had some additional targeted online engagement this past summer, just for some specific proposals that we wanted to hear a little bit more feedback on. In terms of who we heard from, so this is for all respondents, so this is people who answered a survey regardless of where they're living in the South Okanagan-Similkameen. We saw that about 52% of respondents do not take transit, and then we had 15% who take transit a few times a month, 13% who are taking it quite a bit more regularly, so 3 or more times a week. Respondents across the board were the most satisfied with the capacity, condition, and cleanliness of the vehicles, as well as driver demeanor. And then they were most dissatisfied with service span and frequency, as well as the ease of trip planning. And I'll just note that some of the phases of engagement for this plan were done before the introduction of NextRide, so the ease of trip planning through NextRide and vehicle monitoring technology hopefully is improving for people. This is specifically who we heard from for Town of Princeton residents, so a little bit fewer people not taking transit, we're down to 49%. 16% using transit less than once a month, 21% taking it 1 to 2 days a week, and then 11% being more regular users. And again, we see the same things that people are satisfied with, although people in Princeton were a little bit more dissatisfied with the level of availability of shelters and benches. But then, of course, service span and frequency comes up again as something that people would like to see a bit more of. In terms of what we heard, again, this is all respondents. People were mostly riding the bus for shopping, for errands, or social, recreation, or entertainment purposes. People who don't take transit are avoiding it because there are no stops near their house, the service isn't convenient for them, or they use a different mode, like they might walk everywhere, they might drive, they might take their bike. Again, we see span and frequency coming up as something that's appealing, as well as improved amenities along bus routes. So again, the shelters, the benches, lighting. Totally.
Did you just do the Princeton area for that, or was it everybody on Route 50?
So people had it was everybody. The short answer is everybody.
Okay.
And then when...
Because I know like the Headley people want a shelter and that, but like we don't have a regular pickup here, so
yeah,
that's
so
why I'm confused by the outrage
it's
over the lack of shelters.
Yeah, it's a fair question. So the all respondents is everybody across the region, and then for Town of Princeton, it's specifically people who say, I live in the Town of Princeton and I would like to see more shelters or benches or
Interesting.
that kind of thing,
Okay.
yeah.
Thanks. Sorry. Continue.
No, absolutely. It's important to clarify these things. In terms of, so specifically for Town of Princeton, we see similar trip purposes, so people riding for shopping, errands, social recreation, but we do see a little bit more uptick in people riding for medical or dental purposes, which I think is consistent with Route 50 functioning partially as a health connections route, so people are taking it for medical appointments, whereas people in Penticton, for example, might not be relying so much on transit for those purposes. And then, seeing some suggestions for later local service span, more trip time and day choices, as well as improved information. So things like, improved information on scheduling, or on schedules, or sort of better marketing overall of the system. And with that, I will move into the specific service priorities that we are proposing through this plan. So, for the Town of Princeton, these are shorter term priorities. So we will be looking to implement these, of course, pending council and provincial support and funding in the next sort of three years, ideally, 3 years. So first we have adjusting the Route 50 schedule to better align with Route 70 Kelowna-Penticton service. So this would just enable better connections in Penticton to that Route 70, so people would have an easier time traveling from Kelowna south to Penticton and then over to Princeton or locations along the way. So this would come with a resource requirement of 250 annual service hours. Route 50, Penticton, Princeton again, we would be looking to increase service on Route 50 to 5 days per week. So it currently operates Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so this would see us adding those 2 additional service days, providing service Monday through Friday. Again, that's 400 annual service hours. Next we have for Route 51, so this would be looking to introduce new local service, local weekday scheduled service within Princeton, and then we would still be maintaining periods of on-request service in between those fixed trip times, so people still have the flexibility of getting, using the on-demand service if that is what is working for them. And this is a little bit of a larger investment. It's 1,300 annual service hours and 2 vehicles. And I would also just mention for the Route 51 that these resource requirements are determined based off of the service operating 3 days a week. So that would be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday again, and then we would be offering some limited service on Tuesday and Thursday so that to supplement school trips so that people would be able to take the bus to school. In terms of longer term service priorities, so these are a little bit further out on the horizon, we would have, building off of the introduction of local service in Princeton, we would look to extend Route 51 local service until 10 p.m. So the previous priority to just introduce the service would have it operating until about 5 p.m. So this would be adding some additional service specifically on Fridays. Then further building on that with the introduction of Saturday local service. So we would, our typical practice is to kind of have service on the weekend start a little bit later in the day, and then end a little bit later in the day for, compared to our Monday and through Friday service, just recognizing that travel patterns on the weekend are a little bit different, and people, might want to stay out a little bit later. They might want to start their trips a little bit later in the day. So that would be that priority. And then for Route 50, Princeton-Penticton, we would similarly be looking to introduce Friday evening service. So providing an additional round trip on Friday evenings to allow for a little bit more flexibility for people who want to go to Penticton or stay a little bit later in Penticton or Princeton, just to enable that travel a little bit. And I realize I forgot to mention the resource requirements for these, so I can quickly just summarize for everybody's clarity. So the local service on Friday evenings for Route 51, that would be 200 hours annually. The Saturday local service would be 300 annual hours, and then the evening service on Fridays for Route 50 would be 200 annual hours. For the additional Friday evening service on Route 50? It would be a later trip in the evening, so it would not necessarily require a new bus, but yes, sorry, yes. Yeah. In terms of the investment strategies, so to achieve the goals of this plan, we sustained capital and operating investments are required over the next 5 years and beyond. The plan overall calls for approximately 14,000 additional annual service hours and at least 4 additional vehicles by 2030. I will clarify that is for the entire plan, so specifically for the town of Princeton, it's closer to about 3,000 annual hours and 2 vehicles. Although, again, I will mention that vehicle requirements may shift over time just because we need to maintain a proper spare ratio to ensure that if a bus is not fit for service or it breaks down or there's an issue, there is a bus that can perform the service. So this plan calls for 2 vehicles, but it is possible that that may increase over time. But of course, council would be informed of any of those changes before you commit financially to any of these priorities. Moving forward, service improvements will be integrated into our 3-year transit improvement process, known as TIPS. These priorities will be costed and presented to boards and councils for approval prior to seeking provincial funding. TIPS is a rolling 3-year program, so we will present memorandums of understanding that outline the investment trajectory or the investment plan over a 3-year period. And upon signing those MOUs, the first year is a financial commitment, and the second and third years are presented for budgeting and for planning purposes. Prior to implementation of service changes, we will work with local government staff to ensure that improvements are appropriately reflecting local needs and adjust priorities as council or the community kind of directs us to. And I will also just note on the TIPS MOU front, last year council signed an MOU supporting the introduction of local service, and so we will be presenting a similar MOU to council soon to see if there is endorsement for it for your consideration. And yeah, so these are the next steps, is that we recommend that the town of Princeton endorse this Transit Future Action Plan to be the guiding document for the South Okanagan-Similkameen region over the next 5 to 7 years. And following that endorsement, we will integrate these proposals into our expansion and service change planning process. And that concludes the presentation. So myself and Chelsea are happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I've got a couple questions. With the addition of Peachland, that's news to me, which I'm excited about, because something we were trying to negotiate when we first started that. Are they full partners, or is it just a ridership? Like, are they just paying when they pick them up, or are they participating in the overall service?
The Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen has what's called a Community Transit Partnership Agreement
Okay.
with the District of Peachland, so they are charging them annually for a certain number of hours of service being provided to that community.
On top of the fare. Okay.
That's right.
Excellent. So that should help us with some of our costs.
That is that is solely for the Route 70.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, no,
Yes.
because the Route 70, I mean, we
Yes.
pay into Route 70 and we don't benefit from Route 70 at this time. So, the fare structure, you said it's gonna change for the UMO. How is that gonna change?
The issue with the fare structure in the South Okanagan-Similkameen transit system is with the top-up fares that are currently charged. So we have in the South Okanagan-Similkameen transit system both a local fare of $2.25 and a regional fare of $4. So any route that ends in a anything ending in a 0, so the 10, the 20, the 30, the 40, the 50 is a $4 cash fare, and any of the local routes are $2.25. And if a rider is to go from a local route to a regional route, they pay a top-up fare to get to that $4, and that top-up fare cannot be accommodated within the UMO platform. So we have two options that we are going to be presenting to our local government partners, and that will come to you in the form of a fare review within the next couple months. Our fare review team is just finalizing that report. But as a sneak peek, the two options will be, one would be to eliminate tickets, because it's the tickets that cause the problem within UMO, so we could eliminate that from the fare structure. The other option would be to implement a single cash fare across the region of $2.50, and of course that would have a larger impact to the partners that fund the regional routes, because it would be a decrease in the fare from $4 to $2.50. So those will come to you with the financial implications of the two options within the next couple months.
And then the last one on your transit vision, you said one of the important parts is the transit links to villages, schools, and appropriate facilities. So this is the whole reason I've asked the CAO to look into this is to connect our schools, because the school district doesn't seem to want to participate in busing in town. And they told us we couldn't do it, so I said, well, let's find out if we can. Is there a way to recoup costs from a school district, or is that if we put bus stops outside high schools, for instance?
That would be, so it's our local government partners that fund approximately 50% of the transit system. If you were to arrange a arrangement with the school district for them to cover a portion of your local share, then that would be a local government decision, but it wouldn't be something that BC Transit would take on.
So we just try to sell more tickets to high school kids to cover it.
You could do that way, yes. Recognizing, however, Mayor Coyne, that children 12 and under ride for free.
Yeah, it's mostly for the high school kids. They don't have a bus and they're up on the hill. So,
Right.
Does council have any questions? Councillor McLean.
The Princeton to Kelowna run, can it be accomplished in one day there and back?
No, it can't. No, because we get there. And the Princeton bus, I think we've adjusted it a little bit, but when the Princeton bus gets to Penticton, we have a few minutes to be able to get there onto the 70. And then by the time the 70 gets back, Princeton's already, because the Princeton bus gets back at, I think 3:30 it has to be back here. So there's no time for it to,
So, well, we can't.
you can get,
Yes, you can
you
get
can get
there,
from
you
Kelowna
can-
to Princeton, but you
yeah.
cannot get to Kelowna, do your business, and then get back on the same day. And that's why the extra run on the
Friday
Tuesdays
evening.
and Thursdays is so important, because right now, if you go to Kelowna on a Princeton bus, you're there for 3 days.
Yeah.
So it's a very expensive bus ride. And that's been our concern in the Similkameen with us and Karamias and Headley and everybody, is that right now it's a 3-day trip. And it's probably not feasible at this point to rent a hotel at $300 a night to stay in the Okanagan. So.
I saw mine on there as a possibility. Is that feasible? Showed transit from Princeton up to the mine for workers.
Yes, so the TFAP does call for a feasibility study into service between Princeton and Copper Mountain Mine. At this stage, I'm not able to say yes or no, it's
Very early
feasible or
on.
not, yeah. But it would be something that if,
It's just if we're considering things from a climate perspective, it'd be one argument in terms of instead of sending 25 vehicles up there, or 20 or 15 or whatever, you're sending one sort of thing. And that brings me to what kind of fuel do we use in our transit?
Diesel. Currently, your fleet is diesel fueled.
Right.
We do have a low carbon fleet program underway, so we are working towards electrifying our fleet. We aim to be a fully electric fleet by 2040, and that's being based currently on our vehicle replacement plan, starting with our largest heavy duty diesel buses, because that's really where the market is right now for electric buses. So we have our first 10 battery electric buses coming to the Victoria Regional Transit System this year, and then we'll be looking to start rolling out battery electric buses to our regional transit systems over the coming years.
Perfect. Thank you.
No, I'm excited. This has been a long road for us. We've been asking for a number of years, and I'm excited that the regional district is hopefully going to take on this Route 50, because right now Princeton is picking up the largest share in our cooperative group here. So it's nice to see that Karamias is going to have to pay a bit more. That's just a local dig. But thank you. And if there's...
I do just have one question.
Yeah, for sure.
When are we expecting to get that, the cost for the additional hours? I think you said 3,000 additional annual hours.
So we would be presenting council with a memorandum of understanding for the Princeton local service
Okay.
in the coming weeks, I would say,
Okay,
by
so
the summer.
shortly.
And that's currently the priority that we have in our expansion planning process. So if there are additional priorities that were to be included, we could include them.
Have the discussions and then potentially have it by fall implemented, or is it?
No, so currently it's in our expansion planning process for 2024-25, so it would be
Okay.
the following
We got
fiscal
lots of
year.
time.
Okay, thank you.
And as is always the case, our expansions are subject to provincial funding. So we find out about provincial funding on budget day next year, so that will be in February 2024. So if we have a signed memorandum of understanding for your local share, and then the provincial share is available, that's when we will start to planning to implement that expansion. Last year we had a signed memorandum of understanding for the town, from the town of Princeton for the same expansion. Unfortunately, the provincial share was not available. So that was why it was not being implemented this year. We will be trying again for 2024-25.
Thank you.
And we can always ask for a meeting with the minister to push that forward too. So, excellent. Thank you. If there's nobody else has a question, I want to thank you for coming, and I'll see you virtually tomorrow. I won't be able to make it in person, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll go on to 6 staff reports. Veteran Square policy. I believe Mark is going to. Are you doing it, or is Lau going to do it? Aren't you here to fill in for Carrie? No. Here, give this to Lyle then. Here, you want to give that to Lyle?
Oh, I will. My knees were.
Yeah, I'm actually, I wasn't quite prepared. I thought Carrie was going to be here today, but we do have an existing policy in place. However, it is a little bit older, and so staff has gone through it and identified some areas that need to be refreshed and updated and whatever, and so so staff is proposing a bit of a refresh.
Yeah, and I do know that Nadine went over it and
Yeah.
found some stuff that was out of date that was contradicting other things. So she asked, her and Carrie worked together on,
Yeah.
on bringing us up to speed and making it more modern, and so that's what's ahead of us.
There is a summary of the major changes there
Yeah.
in item number 3.
Any concerns? Questions? Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make that. I'll second.
Councillor Elliott, Councillor Gould. Any last questions on the motion? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 6.2, development permit and development variance permit for 245 Highway 3. Is that you, Mark? Or I don't know who I'm supposed to talk to now. It's all yours.
This is application for for a development permit for the retrofit of the building that's currently Subway. For the retrofit to add a 98 square meter convenience store, as well as the new development of a 4-pump gas station. According to the development permit, it is a retrofit of an existing building. There's no adjustment to the footprint or exterior footprint of the existing building. The new 4-pump gas station fits, conforms to the zoning bylaw, meets all setback regulations for this. The applicant and the developer have provided a landscape plan for the frontage of this property on the Burton frontage. So just an addition of some landscaping to that entrance off of Highway 3. All parking requirements are met with the small convenience store addition. They're adding 3 additional parking spaces for that addition, and as well the full form and character review seems to meet the OCP highway corridor requirements. Along with the development permit application, they are also applying for a development variance permit to address an existing non-conforming for the existing building that's there. They are right up against the property line on the Highway 3 side. So it's to address that existing setback encroachment. So reduction from, make sure I get this one right, I think it's 4.5 meters down to the 0 meters that it currently sits on.
Okay, questions?
Sorry, I'll add one more thing. The motion does speak to including the approval of a stormwater management plan. Our infrastructure department has had a chance to look at that stormwater management plan now and feels comfortable with what they've provided.
Councillor Gould, you had your hand up.
Okay, so when we were looking at the original zoning amendment, we had talked about the, like at that time, the planner had said that there was some existing non-conforming nature, like due to the nature of the site. Those things seem to be addressed in the plans. So we no longer have to, like at the 10-meter setback of the fuel distribution pumps.
Yes, they've adjusted those.
They've adjusted that. And then it's noted in the report from the planner that there's no room for an error. So that, at least it's been adjusted, which was one of the concerns. The front setback is Burton Avenue, and that 7.5 meters has been met now. It doesn't, and they've, like you spoke to the fact that they've provided a landscaping plan there, and it fits within it.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, those, I'm just addressing the ones that were originally a concern, and the fact that they've been addressed in this plan. And then the fact also this exterior parcel line, the variance that they're applying for is to a 0 setback, and that's because again it's just already a legal non-conforming existing structure. So that's all I wanted to talk about. Everything else, my questions were answered.
Any other questions?
You mentioned adding 2 parking spots or 3 parking spots.
They've, yes, their proposed plan is adding 3, adding 4, sorry. 4, there's 5 existing on the Subway side of the building, and they're adding.
That was my question, how many was there already?
On the Subway side, there was 5 existing. There's, as it sits right now, there's a parking lot where the proposed gas station would be. So those would be eliminated and 4 more added to meet the zoning requirement.
When we're talking about this, we're talking about this development. We're not talking about Subway. So how many parking spots were for Booster Juice? How many did they have?
I don't have that information.
Okay. Well, it's not really important in terms of that location, but in most of these developments, I would appreciate having an idea about what we're talking about in terms of parking. And again,
They are, so the proposed new parking for, the proposed parking for the new development is for 4 spots, which is one above the requirement for a convenience store.
so 3 for that convenience store.
Correct.
Is all that we require?
Yeah.
Okay.
Based on the 98 square meters.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Motion? Thank you, Councillor Willis. Seconder?
So moved.
Councillor
Seconded.
McLean. Any, double move. Any last questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Takes us to 6.3, a development variance permit for 130 Harold Avenue. Mark, yours again.
This is a sign variance for 130 Harold Ave, which is the BC liquor store. Our variance process to vary the sign bylaw falls under the development permit variance. So it's to add a second story, about a 4-foot sign off the Harold Ave frontage to add some visibility for the storefront off of
Questions? Motion?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gould is making the motion, seconded by Councillor Elliott. Any last questions on the motion? All in favor? Carried. 6.4 is UBCM Grant Application to support EOC. Ed, your turn.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The recommendation is to allow the regional district to take and administer the grant in the amount of $30,000 on our behalf for the EOC. It's similar to grants that we've done in the past 4 or so years, and we've had some good success with moving forward with a regional approach to emergency management.
Questions? Questions? Somebody want to make a motion? Councillor,
I love money.
you love. Councillor McLean is making the recommended motion. Councillor Willis is seconded. Any last questions? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. 6.5 is a UBCM grant application to support ESS. Again, your turn.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the same request that the Council approve a fully funded grant administered by the Regional District for the ESS team here in Princeton, and the teams within the Valley work very closely together, supported by the province and through the various municipalities and the Regional District. I would like to move forward with this as we have in the past.
Thank you. Questions? Motion? Thank you.
A
Councillor
second.
Elliott, Gould. Last chance for questions. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now we'll move down to council reports. I won't miss it this time. Who am I going to start with today? I'm going to start with Councillor Willis today.
I'm not really sure what we're doing, but we attended the meeting with Cotton Mountain yesterday. I thought it was quite interesting. The new proposed fire, I guess not yet, but yeah, they got some good plans, I think, and some good changes. Sounds like they get coming to the right ideas. So,
Perfect.
and then I think we had a special meeting, but that's about where I'm getting.
Thank you. Councillor Gould.
I have nothing to report.
Councillor McLean.
Just reiterate what Councillor Willis was talking about in terms of, I think one of the basic feelings I got out of that meeting was that it's a merger rather than someone buying someone out. It's more of a merger where two companies are going to work together be a benefit to each other in terms of you know, development, exploration, and everything. And just as far as I'm concerned, it's just totally a positive. I'm not sure about that, but I'm thinking it wouldn't hurt in terms of strengthening your pockets in terms of if things were necessary to purchase or whatever. I think they talked about more than that. They talked about that influence as a larger company being able to influence prices when they're going to talk to people, sort of thing. So anyway, from start to finish, I thought it's I think it's nothing less than a real positive development for our community.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott, I know you got lots left.
Well, I'm just going to talk about a couple things. I attended SILGA in Vernon along with you, and I'll leave you to give the report on that, Mr. Mayor.
You can give the report.
No, you can give the report. You got praised on a lot of things, and I'll leave it up to you to take the spotlight on that. Last night I attended, I was late, but I attended a meeting that saw the dissolution, I think that's the right terminology, of the PXA. And as everyone in this room knows, I've had several years of experience on that board myself. And it's kind of sad to see that group fold, but under the circumstances, I think it makes sense. But I think it's also important to recognize the number of volunteers over the years that worked really hard to manage a facility owned by the municipality. And sometimes when it was really, really tough to do that, and sometimes when it was really, really tough to attract events to that facility. So I'm excited with the changes that are going to happen, but I just wanted to recognize the contributions made by many volunteers, not just in the building of that facility, but also the managing of that facility over the years. So I just wanted to say that.
Good point. Thank you. What are we doing? Just trying to figure out what to start with here. So this week, I'll start with SILGA. SILGA was up in Vernon this year, Southern Ontario Local Government Association meeting. It's our annual meeting. I was re-elected to the board for I think a third or fourth term. Lots of good discussions up there. There were some good workshops. Some I didn't agree with, but there were some good workshops. I think the one that stood out the most was the BC Economic Development Association did a presentation, and they could not stop saying good things about Princeton. I'm pretty proud of this moment because you know, we have gotten some flack for our plans to rejuvenate our economy, and we were held up as an example of what a community should do, of the way a community should look at doing business. And the presenters, I think they brought us up half a dozen times. Half their presentation was filled with pictures of Princeton, and we were in a room full of some pretty big players, like, you know, Kamloops, who's got their Kamloops marketing plan, which is, you know, one of the top ones in British Columbia, and Kelowna, and all these guys. And they just kept saying, if you want to see how to do it, you should look at Princeton. So that was good to hear. So kudos to our team, kudos to Gary for bringing that to life. And I think that's important, that we give credit where credit's due. And it's, I mean, we saw the vision and we said, let's do it. And it was staff that made that happen. And I think that's where the credit needs to fall, is on our staff. So thank you. What else? So I sat through a climate caucus meeting yesterday. That's a arm of it came out of the FCM, and there's communities across the country. They were talking about a new proposal for a percentage of GDP to go to municipalities as a direct transfer, kind of like gas tax, but rather it be based on population. It would be based on greenhouse gas emissions, and it was about mitigation and adaptation, or I guess adaptation more so than mitigation. I voiced some very strong concerns with their plan because it is very urban central when they're thinking about it, and you know, they're talking about bike lanes and EV cars and everything, and there wasn't enough discussion about how do we make our communities resilient to these weather events. And I kind of tried to make the point that mitigation and adaptation they go hand in hand. When you're in a city the size of Vancouver, you might be able to get away with it, but in a city, or a municipality our size, or Grand Forks, or even Merritt, they go hand in hand. You know, if we cannot survive the events, there's no community. So I had some concerns. I'm excited that if this moves forward and they can get the support they need in Ottawa, and we can do transfers like that, they're talking 1% of GDP every year to go to municipalities, which would be a huge transfer. And hopefully they will do something along that line. What else? Tomorrow I am appearing before a House of Commons Standing Committee on climate adaptation, and because of the flooding. And I have to thank our MP for suggesting myself and the Mayor of Merritt for being on that committee and telling our story and give recommendations to the House of Commons. They have a mandate to hold some meetings and try to figure out how communities like ours can hopefully survive the future. So we will be making some recommendations. I will be talking about the need for assistance with diking programs in this country, and also housing post-event or in our planning stages, and how to address the fact that we all live in a floodplain in British Columbia. So that's probably the most I can say right now about it, but it's exciting. I think that's the most of it. If anybody has any questions? Councillor McLean?
I've lost track of it, but any idea or in terms of our flood mitigation planning, where that is?
Yeah, so we've had to change things up a little bit. We had that meeting we sat through a meeting with the federal government. It's called DMAF, Disaster Mitigation Adaptation Funding. We sat through this meeting and they explained what the program was and how to apply and what to apply for. There's some pretty stringent rules around it. It's a federal government program where they pay 40% of the cost, but there's a lot of things that they will not cover. When the minister was here, ministerial staff came as well, and there was the public that part of the meeting that everybody saw, and then there was some meetings behind closed doors, and those meetings were with staff saying that we had to get our application in, and the application has to be in, I think, June 19th, somewhere around there, which really accelerated everything. I mean, we were hoping for a final end date on November, so that way we had time to do all this consultation and work with our partners and come up with the best plan possible. We were told that if we do not get this in and we do not try to get at least the 40% of the programming, then there may not be the full financial support that we need from the province, because the province doesn't want to pick up 100% of this tab. They just don't have the means. I mean, let's be real. So the engineers right now are working on a couple plans, and I think they're planning on coming down the next week or so to talk to Jared and Lyle and try to finalize some of those plans, so we can get something before this process, because if we don't, it doesn't stay open. This may be the last year that they have it, so we're kind of
So what I.
Damned
what I
if
was
we do,
getting
damned if
at
we
was
don't.
the presentation that we were put in front of us.
yeah.
Was that was the final part of that, or?
That's
I
the s-
was the understanding they had to keep,
Yeah, so they're working on the rest of it right now. So they've been figuring out what we need to do with the diking based on that science. So that's the stuff that we saw was what the science says.
is that gonna be necessary for June 10th or 9th or whatever?
It has to be ready by then. So they're working. Sean and his team are working pretty much around the clock right now, trying to get it Well, they're trying to go from a November end date to a couple weeks away. So they're trying their best. That's all the federal government will no. And I think I can say, like, the low end of the cost is $100 million, and the high end of the cost right now is $500 million. So when we're talking 40%, we're talking a drop in the bucket. So that's why tomorrow to me is so important that I speak in front of this committee, is that's not realistic. And that's not just us. There are no dikes in the regional district. There's no diking authority in the regional district. So Tulameen, there's nobody to rebuild those dikes. Carameus has a pretty darn good dike system, but they have 4 kilometers of orphan dike before their dike system. So no matter how good Carameus's dike is, they've got 4 kilometers ahead of it that could fail at any moment and throw every dime that they've ever spent down the drain, because it doesn't matter. And this is what we're facing, right? Merritt has to put in a complete diking system because the river that flooded, they've never had problems with it before. So now they have to put a dike system on the entire river to protect the city. So we're talking hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars just in our valley and the Nicola. And if you look at Grand Forks, the mayor of Grand Forks, I was speaking to him, they're still $13 million short on their plan, and that's what they're going into year 6, I think, on their recovery. And there's just not the funding. That's the problem, is just there's nobody to help with the funding on it. And so this is our challenge, is what's realistic and what's reality. And reality is that these dollar numbers are bigger than anybody could ever imagine. And we're not even talking the Lower Mainland and what happened down there, right? So it's a massive problem, and so we're doing our best, and I have faith in Sean and his team to get us the best solution that we can get. It's going to be there's going to be some compromises, and hopefully we'll know soon what we're putting in for an application. And we'll do public consultation once we have all that stuff, and unfortunately, the public consultation will probably come after we actually put in the application, because we just don't have the time. The timelines are too short, and everybody in the country's competing against the same dollars. And I think last time around they were, what was the number? I think they had $2 billion in applications, and there was only like a couple $100 million or some crazy number. So I talked to the minister's office this morning in Ottawa, and that's, he's like, he understands. There's huge problems, so.
Kind of hard to pay for that off our tax base.
We would never be able to
No.
pay for it off our tax base, so, So the reality is, the community itself is gonna have to sit down and do some very serious thinking about what we see as the future of our community, and what is acceptable level of, what's our acceptable level of being wet is what it's gonna boil down to. So, yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Anything else? Okay, we'll move on to the next part, and that's correspondence action requested. The first one is 9.1, the Princeton Community Arts Council Copper Valley Music Festival, August 18th to 20th, 2023. The request is that an exemption of bylaw 923, 2016 noise control, and the Vermilion Avenue be closed to traffic. Further, the Arts Council is requesting guidance on what is required to have a food truck in an event. So the recommendation is that council approve the request for an exemption of bylaw number 923, 2016 noise control attached, and that staff provide written approval as per part 6, section 13 of the bylaw, and that council approve the closure of Vermilion Avenue on August 18th to 20th, 2023, and that the Princeton Arts Council be referred to the town's recreation and events coordinator bylaw to allow food truck vendors at the music festival.
So seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. McLean, any questions?
So just
Councillor Gould.
clarification on the time exemption is from the Friday at 8 p.m. until 9 p.m. on the Saturday? So like a 24-hour exemption? Or just an,
They just want to extend the hours to go later, that's all. And that is in the bylaw, the allowance for music festivals.
right?
With council approval.
Sorry, just when I read the application, it says 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. the next day.
Yeah.
So that's why I was just wondering if it was,
I think they have one act or something.
Yeah.
just to be later the one night.
Yeah.
Okay, absolutely.
Any other questions? All in favor? Carried. Next one is a Little Free Library, Bruce Barth. And I've asked Bruce to come so that he can explain this to us, because there is a bit of a wrench in it, and that's the school district park down on Lions, well, what we call Lions Park down on Allison Avenue. It's not ours. It belongs to the school district, and Bruce yesterday sent me some information, so I asked him if he'd just come and explain that. So, Bruce.
Hi. Did you guys actually look at the pamphlets that I handed out so you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. So the only thing is I talked to the school board about it, and because it is their property and everything, the only thing they're worried about with these libraries is somebody could put like porn or something like that inside one of these libraries. And so they just ask for it to be monitored. The location that I picked for Lions Park is literally right beside the garbage can that the town crews empty on a regular basis. And I would just, like, myself and my daughter would also check it. That's one of the reasons I want one in the park, is for my daughter. But maybe when they're changing the garbages, they could take a quick peek in there and make sure there's nothing too out of the ordinary or too vulgar or whatever in the library. Most of the ones that I've seen and stuff like that, I haven't heard of any complaints or any issues anyway, but most of them are on people's properties. So, and that was the only concern the school board kind of had with putting it down at that park.
Does anybody have any questions?
You're talking about Lions Park and the third bench?
No, in
Allison
the,
Flats.
yeah.
Pardon me?
Allison Flats.
We call that Lions Park now?
It's got Lions Park on. We got 2 Lions Parks, and
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah,
I know it's
because
always been confusing.
The reason for asking is about a block down, there's a little library in the
Yes.
yard there.
Yeah, right
Up
across.
on the third bench.
Yes, and there's another one
There's
that's
another
actually,
right beside the other one.
yeah, and then there's another one that's actually close to where Doug Pateman lives. So there's 2 up in the,
It's in Judy's yard.
is that her name? I spoke with her, I don't remember her name, but, so there's 2 in the third bench area. There used to be one down by where the doctor's office here in town was,
Yeah.
but that lady left town. And then, so like my daughter, who's same age as Lauren, 14 there, we live in the flats, so for Peyton to get all the way up there to go look at those, it's kind of a pain in the butt, right? So, and the only reason I didn't really want to do it on my house is because my street's kind of out of the way. And so I wanted something that was more visible, where more
next door to D.
kids could access and stuff like that. Like my street's pretty quiet, and there's generally you don't see anybody on that street or anything happening, except for Jolene's car got stolen a month ago from our street. Craziest thing ever. But so usually I wanted something that was a little more visible and public kind of thing, and I thought that would be a good area. That's right by a bus stop. And then the park down in the tunnel area there's a lot of kids in that neighborhood too.
So did the school district say that they would be willing to install it for you?
I didn't ask them about the install.
Okay.
I was gonna kinda leave that to the town crews.
Yeah, so the recommendation that we have here is that the town accept the 2 donated libraries and that the public works crew install and maintain 2 little free libraries, and that council approve the installation of one of them at Auburn, the park at Auburn Crescent.
Yeah.
And as an alternate location, the installation of one at Ridgeview Park, located on Loire, and that Mr. Barth still wished to install the library at the Allison Flats one, that talk to the school district and see if they'll install it. But we, council, can always change that if they want, so.
Yeah.
That's why I asked if you had talked to them about installation of it.
Yeah, I never said anything about installation as far as asking them to do it. I did mention that I would get the town crews to do it. And then, like I said, their only concern, they were for it, but their only concern was if they could be monitored somewhat for.
So you just, what do you do, like a bucket full of concrete and drop it in the ground, is that all?
For the one actually by my area, I would just take some like pipe clamps and literally just clamp it to the post on the fence.
Oh, under the, okay.
Right? Like, cause those are already cemented in the ground. The one down on Lions Park, I would take like a pipe or 4x4 or something like that and cement it in the ground right next to where the little entrance garbage can and stuff is.
Okay, so with that, what I would like to do is, if I would change the last section, that the town work with the school district to install that on that park if council wishes.
On their property.
Because it is school district property, so we'll still
Yeah.
have to work with them to, and then if we can just attach it to the fence, that's our fence, I believe, so. I don't know whose fence I don't know what anything is anymore.
Can I just ask before we,
Yeah.
we amend the motion? So it's
There's no motion on the table.
No, so in the recommended motion, the question on the so it was Auburn Crescent, and then as a second alternative spot, the Bridgeview Park. Would that be if Auburn Crescent wasn't working, or if the Lions Park?
Two locations.
So Auburn Crescent, but if the school board wouldn't allow, then Bridgeview Park? Is that what you were thinking?
That's a staff recommendation, it's just easier for us to work on our own property.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We propose those 2 sites, but if Mr. Barth would like it to be on the school property, then we'll just have to work out something.
Where's Bridgeview Park?
It's one closest to the Brown Bridge.
Where the apartment is?
Oh, that's just as good too.
Yeah, there's like a statue there too.
Yeah, there's, yeah,
The
And there's
eagle
yeah.
the fountain.
and a water
Did
fountain.
we put the fountain still
Maybe
there?
not.
That worked.
That's fine too.
Just turn it on.
Just,
Okay,
So if that was the case, then the motion would stand.
okay.
Whichever.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, you're making the original motion?
Yeah, about Auburn Crescent and Bridgeview Park
Okay.
then,
okay.
on town property.
Yeah, that's,
And were you seconding that? Yeah. Councilor Willis is seconding.
He was gonna ask a question.
Do you want my
Are you
gavel?
all right or what?
You want my gavel? You can throw
Jesus.
it.
Sorry, I stumbled. In a lot of ways, this is a great thing, and I think you need to be commended for it. I mean, in terms of where I see my grandkids and stuff, anything that'll get them away from their phones and whatever is an absolute benefit to the community, and I want to thank you for that. Is that okay? Jesus
Very nice.
Christ. Really funny.
I'm sorry, Councilor.
Really funny.
If there's nothing else, I'm gonna call the question. All in favor? Thank you.
Put up with him for another 3 years.
so then I have a question. So do you want me to bring them to the town?
Yeah.
Cause I have them already done and built.
Okay.
I purchased them last fall, and so they're all good to go. They're sitting in my shop
Yeah, how,
And-
you're home for a couple weeks?
till the 15th, yeah.
Yeah, so,
I'd say just bring them to the town, if you can bring them during business hours to the back door of the town office. and
Okay.
Drop them off there and we'll get staff.
Okay, and then I do have to report back to the school district, so I'll just tell them that we're gonna do it at that other park instead.
yeah, it'd be easier, then we don't have to deal with
Okay, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it'll be fast.
Perfect, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later.
Yeah.
9.3 is the Princeton Alcohol Use Disorder Working Group. They are requesting support of the PAUDWG, specifically to, one, collaborate and develop the development of initiatives aimed at getting residents to rethink drinking, and two, select/appoint a council member to represent the town on the PAUDWG. Recommendation is that council support Princeton Alcohol Use Disorder Working Group in their effort to develop and initiate getting residents to rethink drinking, and that council appoint Mayor Coyne as a member of to the working group.
So moved.
Are you in favor of that?
Yeah. All in favor? Yeah, nobody else stepped up, so it's in my portfolio, so. 9.4 is Princeton Minor Ball Association. Princeton Minor Ball Association is requesting council's permission of the following: one, permission to place an electronic scoreboard at Memorial Park, and two, request the town of Princeton provide the installation and maintenance. Before we move to the motion, I thought we already agreed to this last year.
I think it was just the concept of it, you know, and then we actually pursued funding, they've got funding
Yes.
and all that stuff. And if you remember, we actually had a score clock there once before, it was the old one from the arena.
Yeah, over in the corner, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right, but unfortunately, the arena one,
Microphone.
the arena one was an indoor clock, and when
Oh,
we
you
put it
couldn't see it.
outdoors, you couldn't hardly see the numbers, so it wasn't that successful. This is specific to a ball field.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I remember we had this conversation like 2 or 3 times, so. Okay, with that, there's a recommendation to council approve the request from Princeton Minor Ball Association as follows: one, permission to place an electronic scoreboard at Memorial Park, and two, the town of Princeton provide the installation and maintenance of an electronic scoreboard.
I will make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Gould, seconded,
So
Councilor
seconded.
Elliott. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Carried, thank you. I think in the future, just speaking out loud here, we should probably have, if not in person, maybe the chance to have some of these people here to ask questions if it's, because today it's like half of our agenda is letters of request, so. I mean, I try my best to understand it all, but I mean, with nobody to speak to their motions, it can kind of be difficult. 9.5, Quad Riders ATV Association. The Quad Riders ATV Association are requesting the following: one, garbage, that we would like to request the town's dump truck be parked at the PXA ground for garbage collection throughout our event. Two, we would like to know if you would allow us to have one central fire pit on the PXA grounds for evening gatherings. We will be willing to follow any protocols set out by your local fire department. Three, our event starts on Wednesday. Our setup crew would like to start setting up on the Sunday prior, June 25th. We would like to know if the grounds would be available for us to start setting up early, and if so, we would like a setup crew to be able to park the RVs on grounds during the setup period, and if so, what would the additional cost be? The recommendation is the council approves the request of Quad Riders ATV Association as follows: one, the approval of the use of the town's dump truck for garbage collection at the event. Two, approval to have one central fire pit on the PXA grounds for the evening gatherings as per Town of Princeton bylaw and any protocol set out by the fire chief. And three, approval for a setup crew setting up on the Sunday prior, June 25th, and approval for the setup crew to park the RVs on the ground during the setup period at no additional cost. Just so you know, they are paying a daily fee during the event for the campers that are staying up there, and they're also paying a rental fee for the ground. So this is a great group. They've been up there before, and we actually talked to Paul Bedard, who I believe was the president at the time, and he said they were a great group. They looked after themselves. They're very clean, very organized, and very respectful. So, any questions? Thank you. Councillor Willis is making it. Councillor McLean is seconding.
When they came before, they are not like an unorganized group of people. When they go somewhere, they go all in the line and very organized, and they have people watching where they're going, and it's not a normal.
That's exactly what Paul said. He said they come, they're completely organized, they leave in an orderly fashion. They're like putting through the grounds. They're a great group. So, and it's exciting because they're going to bring, I forget how many people Nadine said are already signed up, but it's hundreds of people to the community for this event. So it's not a small event. Yes, they are mostly self-contained up at the PXA grounds, but they do go out and they shop downtown and they'll buy groceries because they're camping and whatnot. So they'll be mingling around the community, and they plan on going on a couple rides on different levels of skill and exploring the area, and hopefully they'll come back on their holidays. So, any other comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. The next part is 9.6, the Quad Riders ATV Association of BC. They are requesting permission by the way of permit for OHV use on Laurie Curry Way, Airport Road, the trail that parallels the Airport Road up to China Creek Road and further. They're requesting permission to cross over the Princeton Summerland Road to the Industrial Park to access the KVR Trail. The recommendation is council approves the request for the Quad Riders ATV Association in British Columbia for the permit of OHV use on Laurie Curry Way, Airport Road, the trail that parallels the Airport Road up to China Creek, and permission to cross over the Princeton Summerland Road to the Industrial Park for access to KVR Trail as per section 4.1D of the Town of Princeton's Off-Road Vehicle Bylaw number 925/2016, and that the Quad Riders ATV Association provide licensed flaggers during the event. Questions?
Yeah, I'm just not familiar with any quad riders I know that provide flaggers.
Well, when we did this last time, they did provide flaggers.
It's perfect. It's excellent. I'm just saying. I'm not used to it.
Yeah, no, it's a great group. So
anyway, so moved.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Elliott or McLean. Yes.
Question. I'm assuming this has all gone through the RCMP as well?
They do have
Yes.
They do have to get provincial approval as well through the RCMP. Yeah.
I was down at the detachment, and their organizer was down there talking to Sergeant Hughes. So Sergeant Hughes is well aware of it, and
Good. I'll second that motion then.
Okay. Any last questions? Yeah.
Sorry, just on the, it says access to the industrial park to the KVR Trail. What access point are they trying to get to the KVR Trail?
There's a trail. There's supposed to be a trail at the end down by the shop where the shop's going that accesses the trail. So
Actually, that's right.
I believe that's what they're planning on.
Because there is a trail from the PXA grounds towards like the entrance to the Swan Lake Reserve near the.
So that is not accessible by motorized vehicles.
Yeah, there's one that leads to.
There's a trail there, but it's not legal.
Like you mean vehicles? It's an ATV.
Yeah, so where the PXA has put the fence is not where the fence is supposed to be, and where the trail goes is a no-go zone for.
Not to Swan Lake.
No, yeah.
You know, like towards
Swan Lake property goes all the
Rainbow
way
Lake?
up there, and they cross over Swan Lake property as is right now, and it's not a legal trail.
Okay, because I was just going to say so that it would be access that doesn't go into an industrial park.
Yeah, we'll get clarification on that. I don't have the mapping in front of me and whatever, but the mayor is correct. The existing trail that's there now, that's kind of ad hoc, does go across Crown land, which is part of the reserve.
Okay, supposed to.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was trying to limit the interaction with vehicle traffic because it is busier up there now with businesses being.
Yeah,
up there.
so when they do this, it won't be like ongoing. It'll be like they will take a organized ride and then they will go down and off. That's why they have to have the flaggers and stuff. So it'll all be like at one time, right? And then when they come back, they'll have a flagger to direct them as they come back. So.
No, I support that motion.
Any last questions, comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next one is the 2023-2027 financial plan bylaw. James.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the table is adoption of the 2023 to 2027 financial plan bylaw. It went through third reading on April the 19th. A couple of points of concern I will bring up just for council's consideration. We had a little bit of a date mix-up with the report. So third reading was April 19th, and final adoption is scheduled for May 3rd. We had a little bit of a delay getting it onto the agenda due to the public consultation and when the dates were scheduled, so that didn't get updated in the report. So my apologies, a simple clerical error. A couple of bigger questions with regards to the financial plan itself. It was asked if the arena roof project will change the financial plan. At this point, usually I do my best to try and restrict changes to capital items this late in the game. I am required by law to submit a passed financial plan by May 12th. So my recommendation to council would be to pass a financial plan, and when we are all set with dates with the roof, then I will submit an amendment and we will amend the financial plan to up the capital budget by the certain amount. It's all grant funded anyway. It's not going to cost the town any more money. It's simply adding a grant on one side and a reduction of the reserves on one side, because council resolved to pass it by removing money out of the future amenity fund, and then adding the additional expenditure under the capital plan.
So I will add that if we are to change the financial plan at this point, you do need to repeal third reading, and it will take another.
Right.
Or we can amend the financial plan at a later date.
Yeah.
I have to have
no,
it
but if
by-
you want to change it right now,
That's
we
right.
have to go backwards before
Yeah.
we can go forwards, because
Exactly.
once third reading is done, it's almost like you've adopted it. There's just a sober second thought period, and then fourth reading is just enacting it. So right now where we're at, if we are to change that, we would have to go backwards, and then we would have to have a special meeting of council to
Yeah,
deal with this.
so my recommendation to council would be to pass the financial plan as is, and then we can look at a simple amendment in a bylaw
Which is allowed.
when we're ready to go closer to the arena project. The other one was the Growing Communities Fund. So we had the debate last time that the listing of the Growing Communities Fund was quite extensive in the bylaw, whereas the actual enabling wording in the bylaw itself was quite concise. When we have two bylaws that say the same thing, it's the most narrowest restriction that obviously will take effect. So what's written in the bylaw will be in effect moving forward. So in effect, it does say the same thing. So I will submit the bylaw for adoption upon any other discussion with council. Thank you.
Any questions? Comments? Motion? Councillor McLean is making the motion to adopt.
I'll second.
Councillor Gould is seconding. Any last questions or comments? Therefore, I am calling the question. All in favor? And that is carried. The last motion here is 10.2, the 2023 tax rates bylaw recommendation that the Town of Princeton tax rate bylaw number 1038 2023 be adopted. James, do you want to speak to it? Or?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also submit the 2023 tax rates bylaw for adoption. Again, third reading was submitted on April the 19th. This is a simple adoption of the bylaw. Again, a clerical error that was pointed out. The report references a 2022 to 2026 financial plan bylaw. It should read 2023 to 2027 financial plan bylaw. So again, just a simple typographical error that needs to be cleared up in the report. Otherwise than that, the tax rates bylaw stands. Again, that's something else that needs to be submitted to the province by May 12th. So any change at this point would revert back to second reading, and it would require a special meeting. And I have had no feedback on the tax rates bylaw, so I would ask that council adopt the bylaw. Thank you.
Questions? Comments? Motion? Councillor Willis, Councillor Elliott. Any last chance for questions or comments? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. I do have one quick question, James. Grant and aids, have we received any?
We have 3, and again, my apologies to council, we haven't brought it forward yet. Most of the requests for financing has been events later in the summer. I will get that onto the second council meeting in May.
Can we discuss them at the next committee of the whole?
We could, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can also put that on the agenda for there.
Next thing is motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councilor McLean.
I'll
Councilor
second.
Gould, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Yeah, we have one event waiting, whether or not, it hinges upon whether or not we give them a grant.
When they gotta be in?
They had to be in